You can do this stood up if you want.
Yeah, yeah. I'm happy to sit down for a minute,
Okay.
but I'll stand up in a few minutes.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you going to stand or sit?
Either. I'm happy to stand maybe so I can see people.
Yeah. We don't have space.
Well.
Wow. Ah. Okay, this is where I'm glad I've not got my iPad plugged in now. Does anybody know on iOS how you stop notifications coming in from your girlfriend while you're presenting, like I had yesterday? No, that doesn't stop it if you've got it open. I can't see what I'm looking at then. Yeah. And notifications were coming in yesterday as I was presenting. On my iPhone. It does, but if you're in an app, it will still show the notification.
But what app were you in that you were presenting and get notifications?
I can't remember. It was Keynote, but I was still getting text message notifications, even though...
Oh, like if it's on.
Yeah, it was on. SMS notifications. Yeah, I will, because she's on WhatsApp. Yeah. Yeah, it didn't seem to do it, but anyway. Okay. Wow. Just let a few people find some seats. I think we've timed this about right, the actual seating. Wow. I was dubious for a moment. Cool. Okay, thanks for coming along, everyone. I'm Rachel Lawson, the Community Liaison for the Drupal Association. And I think you know Dries. If you don't, this is Dries. Okay, so thank you to everybody who has already submitted a question, and I will try to work my way through those. If you want to submit a question, you can do it online, if you can still get Wi-Fi, by visiting slido.com, and then it will ask you for a meeting number, and it's just Dries. Okay? So you can do that as you go. And I'm going to ask the questions in the order of the popularity. So you can kind of give thumbs up there, and it kind of pushes them to the front. And we will work our way through and see how we go. It's the first time I've used this software, so hey-ho, this could go interesting. So, Dries.
Yes. Is this thing working, by the way? Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great.
First of all, in today's Dries note, you mentioned that Drupal's heartbeat is back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it too. Why do you think we lost it in the first place?
That's a good question. That's a very literal question. I guess I meant to say more like our heartbeat is stronger. I don't think we lost it completely. But it was kind of a metaphor for, obviously we have a rhythm and a cadence, and, that's creating a lot of momentum. That's what I was trying to say. I guess I wasn't trying to say that we had lost our heartbeat, although, obviously, if you looked at that slide, with all of the releases over time, you could see that there was a very long time between Drupal 6 and 7 and between 7 and 8, right? And so one could argue that we've lost that release heartbeat. So now that's back, and our innovation engine is back, I would say, in a way that we haven't had that in a long time.
I love the way that now you feel like there's value when you're committing into the project, when you're actually contributing. It's not that far away from it actually being a real thing. Yeah. And that side of the heartbeat, I personally love.
Yeah, I think it's way more rewarding for contributors, right? Like if you contributed something in the early days of the Drupal 8 development cycle, you may have to wait like 5 years or something before that feature was actually available in the hands of users or developers. And so now, like if if you contribute something and it gets committed, it's very likely to be available in less than 6 months. It may be available in as less as 3 months, right? And so we used to have that in the early days of Drupal, because I think even between Drupal 1 and Drupal 2, I think it was about 3 weeks of time in between those things. And so there was this heartbeat, even though in the early days it was just me, but then later we would also do frequent releases. And then we went to these mega releases, and now we're back to more regular releases. So I think it's way better. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, thank you. Now, it's funny because is Delona here yet? She had to go see a client first. No, she's not here yet. Well, a question that's related from Delona. So, we've got the heartbeat.
Yeah.
Where do you envision Drupal to be in 5 years from now?
5 years. That's a great question. By the way, we have another chair. There's 2 more seats here too, if somebody wants to sit up front. There's a chair there next to, maybe raise your hand so they can see if you don't mind. So 5 years is a long time from now, especially in today's world. I hope all of the initiatives that we're currently working on are done, which they should be done. But I would hope Drupal is in a position of strength. Like open source communities thriving. We have a very healthy community of people contributing to the project. I like the idea of all of us being on a single release. Like I said this morning, I'm not sure if you saw that, but there's an opportunity that we won't have 7 and 8, but that everybody's sort of on one release and we're all doing upgrades every 6 months. I think that could be very exciting. So I hope we would be innovating fast and bringing people along, and we don't ever have to talk about all these upgrade challenges and migration challenges in the way that we do today. So, I would hope that Drupal is still recognized as a leader like we are today in content management, that people look up to us like they do today in terms of open source management. It's hard for me to tell what we would look like in terms of features and functionality, but where I believe the world is going is increasingly more integrated. Again, 10 years ago, content management was a standalone application. Really, people just installed it and people would enter content into it, and that was it. And so today, increasingly more, it's not sufficient to just use a content management system. Like organizations integrated with a CRM system, a marketing automation tool, an e-commerce platform, obviously, very often the case. And so I think that's only going to increase these kinds of integrations, because we have more and more of these marketing technologies popping up. And then we also have more and more channels. It's not just publishing to a website anymore. It's now driving, voice assistants and chatbots and IoT devices. And so I think the world in 5 years is going to be a lot more integrated and connected. I'm very confident that content will still be a critical part of this new world. In fact, we'll all have to create way more content than what we're creating today, because especially if you start doing things like personalization, right? So I can sell you this water bottle. If I sell this water bottle to an elderly couple, I may show photos and content of them sitting on the beach drinking a water bottle. If I sell the same water bottle to people in their early 20s, I may show this water bottle in a pub and have a different kind of content, right? And so in a world that's more and more personalized and different channels and contextualized too, based on where people are, I may sell you this differently when you're at work versus at home. I don't know if that's creepy or not, but that's what's starting to happen today. And This is going to be the longest answer to the
Yeah,
simplest question. So content, I know for a fact, is going to be still there and increasingly critical. And so I feel
Okay.
pretty good
Yeah.
about these things.
It's funny you should mention about looking to the future and on all those things that are going to happen. Because the next question is another future question. It's an anonymous one. I'd like to see more with names on it, actually. Hint. You mentioned Drupal 9.
Yeah.
Will there be a smoothish transition from Drupal 8 to 9? Because 7 to 8 was, pretty painful.
Right.
What can we do to make it easier 8 to 9?
Yeah, so there should be a smooth transition. Like we've spent a lot of time thinking about how to do that. And so I can elaborate a little bit on that. So basically Drupal 9.0.0, which is the first Drupal 9 release, will pretty much be like the last Drupal 8 release, minus, the fact that we dropped deprecated code. It's a little bit of a simplification, but let's go with it for now. And so if the only thing that we change is dropping deprecated code between 8 and 9, technically modules, Drupal 8 modules that don't use deprecated code will automatically work on Drupal 9, right? And so we're deprecating code with every minor release right now. And so if you're a module maintainer, if you follow that along incrementally versus Big Bang style at the end of the Drupal 8 lifecycle, if you switch to new APIs and deprecate old APIs in your modules, that module should automatically work in Drupal 9. And so there's actually a little bit of infrastructure in place that allows you to check if any of your modules use deprecated code.
Yes.
Did somebody say something?
I said yes. I think that's a
sorry,
really
it was
good thing.
And so check that out. I think it's part of the test infrastructure. Actually, I know you are working on that, Alex. Do you want to talk about that for 1 second?
Sure.
Yeah? That'd be helpful?
Sure. So at least with Core at the moment, if you deprecate an API in Core and you actually add the code to trigger errors to say that you've got a user deprecation, then the test bot will pick up if any new patches come along and add usages of that old deprecated code. Hopefully by 8.7 we'll have rolled that out for contrib as well, so you'll be able to tell if your contributed projects are using deprecated code. And once that's there, then people can upgrade and we'll find issues and fix it, and hopefully everything will go smooth. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So it should be easy, but it assumes that the modules you use are using the latest APIs and that you're also staying up to date with those, right? So one of the things that we should do probably is kind of help people understand whether the modules that they're using are, like, between quotes, good modules. I mean, we have to figure out a better name for that, but you get the point. Like modules that are properly maintained, not using deprecated code, because then you can tell in advance whether your site will upgrade or not. So it's probably something we could surface on the project pages or something.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Who's a
Yeah.
module maintainer? Wow.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, you know your job then.
yeah. Spread the word too, because I don't know if everybody's aware of this. But
Okay. So,
yeah.
hang on, where are we? So, do you think there is a community consensus on the focus on ambitious digital experiences, and that being a universal accepted target group?
I don't think there is. I don't think there is a single thing in the history of Drupal where we have community consensus. But sometimes we have more consensus, and other times we have less consensus. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't think everybody's completely behind that, and I also wouldn't expect that to be. I don't think it's possible that everybody would say, absolutely, this is great.
No, but I don't think I'd want to
yeah.
be there either, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think some people really want Drupal to be for very small websites like it used to be, and I get that. but I don't think it's facing the facts. I don't think it's facing reality of what's happening. And so the truth is the market has changed quite a bit. And the absolute low end of the market is served with other solutions, Wix, Squarespace, all of these things. And I think it's really hard to compete with that, right? And so I think the market changed, and in many ways, Drupal successfully changed with the market. That's a good thing. And so now it gives us a position where we can be, again, sort of the leader, right? And so that is a big adjustment for a lot of people. And for some people, change is hard, and for some people, it takes more time to come to that same conclusion than for other people that believe, already came to that conclusion sooner. So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, so looking at that future, will the React-based admin UI go into Drupal 8 or 9?
Good question. I don't think we've answered that quite yet. To be honest, I don't think we know. The React work is, I think it's tremendous. They've made a lot of progress. At the same time, they still have a long way to go as well, right? And it's unclear how long it will take right now. There's a lot of big questions being figured out that we haven't fully figured out yet. So I don't know is the answer. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that. It would absolutely be great if we could get it into 8, but I don't want to sign up for that or commit to that. Laurie?
So there's multiple different trajectories, but one of the things we've discussed as a potential way to proceed is to allow installing the new admin UI on Drupal 8 manually, but it wouldn't be included in Drupal core, and maybe it could be included in Drupal 9 by default. And something like that seems like the most likely option, but like Dries said, I don't think we have a clear answer to that.
Yeah, so we started with a prototype, and I didn't explain that very well in my Dries note this morning, but we started with a prototype because the team wanted to be able to innovate independently, and also because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so just by doing the prototype, they've learned a lot, things that were missing, like how do you, how do you support both Twig and non-Twig? Like that was a question that we looked at. How do you manage URLs where some of the, that's what I meant, like some of the URLs are rendered by a Twig template versus a React template. Like, is there something we can do there to bring that together or not? They started using the web services APIs to do the communication between Drupal and the React prototype. And surprise, surprise, was a lot of APIs missing, right? And so there's a lot of web service APIs that need to be added as well. Like, I think one of the first things that they tried was building a permissions page. So admin user permission, I think it is. And there was no API to request all the permissions. And so as we do these things, it's like, whoop, this is missing, that is missing. We have to figure that out. And so it's been a discovery journey in many ways. I think they've identified the big things that need to happen, but I don't think we have solutions for all of them. I think if you want to get involved, there's a lot of things you can get involved with there. And so even like today, the focus is on the content authoring piece. But if you think about what it could be, it's the entirety of the administration UI. It's a lot more stuff, a lot more stuff. And so, something to figure out.
It's funny how talking about React UI leads into the next question.
Yeah.
Is PHP a technology that's still relevant in the future?
Yeah, I think so. People have asked me that question for the last 15 years. But I'm not joking. People, like from day one, a lot of people disliked PHP. Not everybody, obviously. And I think it's still the case today. People think, years ago, the question was Java versus PHP. And then it was Ruby on Rails versus PHP. And now it's JavaScript versus PHP. got to remember PHP is a massive language. It's used by so many people and so many organizations. I mean, it's going to be relevant 10 years from now.
Cool.
Yeah, and they're innovating too. You know, they're not sitting still.
This is true.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't have upgrade issues.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. So today we found out that DrupalCons will be organised professionally from now on. I think they mean an external company.
Yeah.
It was always
It was
professional.
professional.
Where does this leave volunteers for events?
Yeah, it's a good question. So they're still going to need volunteers, right? So they really are a logistics company, if I not want to dumb down what they do, but they don't know what makes a great developer track. They don't know, you know, what sessions to feature or not to feature, and so they're going to work with the community, the volunteers, to put the program together, and all of these things. And so we've actually created a little advisory board. I think Gabor is on there. Is that right? Or maybe. Hi, Megan, you're here. You can talk to this too. But yeah, there's an advisory board.
You can say what you want now because you're on your way.
So Megan has done all the negotiations and worked with them, so she's absolutely the best person to answer. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have this advisory committee to help decide what the programming should be for DrupalCon. It's going to be co-chaired by Batty Breitert, who helped put on Drupal Europe, and also Leon Tong, who is one of the leads for Drupal Camp London. And you could go to, if you Google DrupalCon Amsterdam right now, you can find the application form to be considered for this committee. They're going to pick 6 other people that have event organizing experience here in Drupal. And what they're going to do is reach out to the community, hear what the needs are. They have a lot of learning from Drupal Europe already, but they want to make sure it's an inclusive process and represent the needs of the European community. And then they're going to kind of aggregate that, bring it to Quoni and say, here's where we think we need to go to grow Drupal adoption, to accelerate contribution, to keep our culture. And then Quoni will make sure that kind of programming happens at the venues the right size, with enough rooms, with enough catering for that kind of event. And this advisory committee is going to create a subcommittee for all the content. So it'll be the track chairs kind of process that we are used to for DrupalCons and Drupal Europe. And so they're going to oversee that and make sure we have really compelling content and that we still keep the community speakers part of the process. And then, of course, they're talking about another committee that will be created out of this advisory board, which will be the volunteers. So if you want to be a room monitor or any of the other kinds of volunteer roles with this event, then they'll make sure there's an easy way for you to sign up and participate and help make that event really special.
So happy you were here. Thank you,
Thank
Megan.
you. Thank you, Megan. Okay, so we've got one from Tara now. Do you want to actually read it out because you're here?
Sure. Well, I don't have it up. Great, thank you. I was wondering what it would look like to have a diversity and inclusion initiative as one of Drupal's strategic initiatives, and if that kind of thing would be possible within the Drupal project.
Great question. I like the idea. I'm just going to speak my feelings because I don't have a good answer, but my initial reaction is I like the idea. I think we're actually doing a number of things already, right? Like the, what's the team name? The DD&I contributions team and the open demographics project and how we're integrating that in the gender field module, which then will go on D.O. I know that that Megan and the staff has really worked hard to increase diversity of speakers at Drupal events. So I don't know if these are all the initiatives, but in a way there is all these initiatives. So maybe there's a way to roll them up in a bigger initiative, I don't know, and add more. So I like the idea. I'll have to sleep on it and think a little bit about how that could be structured. But I think increasing diversity is very important. I think I've repeated that many times in the past, and I still believe that.
Yeah.
So anything we can do. I'm happy and proud that we have made progress on diversity, and that was also in my report that I published earlier this week. But at the same time, the progress was fairly, in ways it was big, and in other ways it was, minuscule, right? And so we have a long way to go, and so we need to try different things, and so yeah, I want to do that. So open to ideas. Let me come back to that.
Cool.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, so it starts with a thank you, actually, first of all. It's another anonymous one saying, many thanks to the security team for management of the security issues, Drupalgeddons. I don't like the word Drupalgeddon, by the way, in case you've not worked that out. Are there lessons learned for the possible future security events?
Like security bugs?
Yeah. So are there any lessons that we've learned from our activities in the past that we could apply to the future?
Yeah, I'm sure there's many. Trying to think what a good example is. I mean, just like in the rest of Drupal core, we're constantly learning and tweaking, right? So like we've changed our release processes, we have changed gates, we've done all these things. I'm sure the security team is constantly adjusting how they work as well. Trying to think of a good example. I don't know. I can't think of any right now, but
Sometimes it's difficult, isn't it? Because their very nature is to do some stuff quite quietly.
right. Yeah, it's part of our job, everybody's job, to constantly look for ways to improve, to the point that you forget what you improved.
That's true.
I mean, like one I announced this morning, like the long-term support. That was a good learning, I think. Like when we launched the first version of Drupal 8, we thought the 4-week migration, the 4-week period to upgrade was going to be sufficient. And it turns out that it isn't.
It really isn't.
And so we've actually been learning the entire year, all of 2018. We've backported things without making an official policy, and the goal of doing it sort of secretly or non-officially, wasn't secretly, was to actually learn what it would take. And we found all sorts of bugs in Drupal core even, where security notifications weren't correct when we backported things. And so we had to rewrite the tests, and then we have to do a whole bunch of work to make that work. So, I mean, that's already 3 learnings just to do this one feature. So
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I'm quite liking this multiple people coming.
So I believe Jess has a session tomorrow, XGM, that is detailing specific learnings of specific vulnerabilities that have been worked through the security team and how they work with different projects. Was it today?
oh,
Hopefully,
yeah.
hopefully the organizers succeeded recording, and then you will be able to watch it later.
So whoever was in that session can answer this question.
Yeah.
Oh, it's happening right now. That's harder.
Okay. Oh no, I'm not even sure. Is Andrew in the audience? Is it about rules? Yeah. So let me give this to Andrew for a moment, because I think I can reach you. Here you go.
Yes, thanks. So in Drupal 7 it was very cool model rules. We use it almost in all projects, and there was pretty cool UI. And in Drupal 8 right now, we see that there's this not real stable version. So some parts of rules are really not done, and I would like to know what the future of the model rules for Drupal 8.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I saw the MD system. Anyone from MD systems in there? Yeah, there you are.
Oh, really?
Yes, I was.
All right.
I think. No. No. Okay. Well. Sorry, maybe I'm confusing you. So I don't know the details about rules. I know that they tried to raise money because it's such a big module, a lot of work to upgrade it. They tried to get funding, but they didn't succeed in getting all the funding that they needed. And so I think it's stuck on that. So if you want to unblock it, I'm sure you can fund it to get it done or do it yourself. But yeah, I can't speak for them because I've not been closely involved with the rules module. Sorry. But I don't know if anyone else here has, but no. Sorry?
I was going to say, even I've managed to write code to do some of the rules stuff in Drupal 8.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a lot easier to write code than it was before. So
Yeah.
the Drupal the
Maybe it's
rules
less
thing
needed.
is less lower kind of need for me, and I'm not a big developer. So okay, so how do you feel about all of these layout builders that are appearing on D.O Contrib? Things like Gutenberg and Elementor, to name a few.
Yeah. I think it's good, actually. Let's see how I explain that better. I mean, this has been a gap of Drupal to not have these more, WYSIWYG layout builders or page builders. And having multiple different solutions right now actually helps us, right? Like it helps us get out of, get more users to pay attention to Drupal, get more people to use Drupal. And it's probably also healthy to have a variety of them, because I'm sure each of these solutions have strengths and weaknesses compared to, to each other, and even compared to what we're doing in core, right? I'm sure what we have in core is maybe not sufficient or exactly what everybody needs. And so having some variety there, I think, is only healthy, and we can learn from these different solutions and bring back the best ideas and do these kinds of things. But in the meantime, it really sort of grows, our addressable market, to use a business term. Like basically the people that want to use Drupal and can use Drupal. So I only see upside to having optionality right now.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And it also tells us that we have a need.
Yeah.
It means
exactly.
the need is absolutely there. Okay, talking of need,
Yeah.
it's hard to find developers, but very hard to find young developers to bring them to Drupal over other frameworks. What can we do about this?
Well, I think a lot of it starts and stops with having a great product. That's step one. I think it's make Drupal really great. I think we're headed in the right direction. We continue to clean up a lot of code, and we continue to move towards OO and deprecating procedural stuff. So I think all of these things are good. I think the work we're doing around the JavaScript modernization initiative, I think, is really helpful too. Because as I said, it helps bridge a gap to these communities. I think the work that we're doing around headless or decoupled Drupal, I think, is really helpful, because it brings those kinds of people into the project. And then the work that we're doing on the new administration UI helps too. So I think continuing to do all the things that we're doing, can only help, not make things worse in my mind. And I think there's also, more things we can do. One of the things I haven't seen a lot of, or maybe enough of, if I can be self-critical, is us going to these communities and presenting our work and our progress. I talked to a lot of people in the developer world, and a lot of them, they're kind of stuck, or the idea that they have about Drupal is kind of like from 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And so we really need to go to them and say, hey, the Drupal that you knew or that you last looked at 7 years ago, 10 years ago, isn't the Drupal that we have today. And we've actually made a lot of progress. And so I think going to the conferences that they're at, or maybe instead of blogging on our own sites, maybe we should try and do a guest article on sort of the websites that are frequented or visited by like we talked earlier about,
like Smashing Mag and
yeah,
things like that.
why don't we
yeah.
get an article out on Smashing Magazine once in a while? Like, I'm subscribed to that site, and they talk about WordPress and other stuff, but they don't talk about Drupal. And I think the way to get them to talk about Drupal is to actually submit articles. That's usually how these things work, right? So it's about writing it and then reaching out and be like, hey, are you interested in this kind of article? And often they'll say yes, because they're all hungry for articles, especially well-written articles. So I think we can do more. Like, in a way, our software got off the island, but we haven't yet. So we need to reach out to these communities and tell them what we're doing. It's not that hard, actually, but that would help a lot.
It would.
Yeah.
It just struck me as well. I've been in a lot of meetings about marketing this week, and it seems like those potential young developers are actually one of our target audiences from marketing. We actually need to think how we put ourselves across to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we need to
absolutely.
go where they are
Yeah.
versus expecting them to come to us.
Absolutely.
So.
So, talking of the youth, do you think the Internet of Things and Drupal could work?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I don't know. I think this goes to the ambitious digital experiences, right? Like, I can see a future where we're building much more ambitious applications with Drupal, where Drupal does integrate with these, Internet of Things devices. So yes, I do think there's an opportunity. I think of the Internet of Things as sort of an event system that generates events. And I've given examples in the past, but, they usually trigger something. And then, I gave a silly example in the past, I think, about Nike shoes. You guys remember that? Where I said, well, imagine you have a chip in your shoe. And if you've walked, 300 miles with these shoes, then maybe that should trigger an event where like a company like Nike could say, hey, maybe it's time to buy new shoes because your sole is getting worn out, and maybe you start risking medical injuries or something. I mean, look, it sounds futuristic at this point, but I don't think it is.
Sounds worryingly like my HP printer ink Cash just
Yeah.
has.
Yeah. Yeah. Or Rebecca, I showed that in my Nashville keynote, how she's using, medical devices for diabetes, and that device talks to a Drupal site, right? To share, to get data from the device to the Drupal site, visualize the data. I'm sure it's also triggering events, like if something goes, if the glucose levels, I think it is, go off the charts, then she gets notified, right? And so these are all examples of where Drupal can be integrated with these things. So that's why maybe the rules module needs to be working, because you want to say, if this happens, then do that. So until we fix the rules modules, it might be hard.
Okay. Excuse me.
Yeah, do it for Rebecca.
Magento was recently bought by Adobe. It says here, this could happen to Drupal too. How do you feel about that?
Somebody buying Drupal?
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
I don't even know how you do that. So Drupal is open source, first of all. So is Magento, sort of. But what's very different between Magento and Drupal is that in the case of Magento, the copyright was centralized and was belonged to a single company, right? So if you want to contribute to Magento, you can, but you need to basically sign a contributor agreement, a legal document that says, thanks for your contribution, but we now own it. So we don't have that in Drupal. And so what that means is that each of you own your contribution. And so the ownership of Drupal is completely distributed amongst all of the contributors, which is a beautiful thing. Because if somebody wants to buy Drupal, which they technically could, they would have to come and approach all of you and say, I want to buy the part that you wrote, and I'm going to pay $1,000 for that part. and then they go to the next person. And so you basically have to buy all of the individual ownership pieces of all of the contributors in the history of Drupal. So that's never going to happen. So I don't think Drupal is for sale.
That's good to
I
hear.
mean, they could buy Drupal companies, that, you know, and Drupal companies are being bought today. So that's possible for sure. But the software itself cannot be bought in a traditional sort of M&A style transaction. So, yeah.
You've worked in the Drupal project for a long time, 18 years.
Almost 18 years, I think, yeah.
Do you have any plans to move on to something else in the future?
I don't, actually. No, I feel really good about what I'm doing, to be honest. I have a lot of fun.
No retirement plans.
Say that again?
No retirement plans.
Yeah. No, like, I don't have any plans to change what I'm doing. I feel like my work is very rewarding in one way, and it's very challenging in other ways. And it's very, there's a lot of variety of different things that I'm doing. And so, yeah, I feel like doing this for a while, if it's okay with you guys. So,
Well, we'll think about it.
yeah.
Okay.
If I want to move on, I'll let everybody know well in advance. So, you know.
Well, that's planned succession, and that's a
Yeah.
good thing, isn't it? That's what we always talk about.
Well, we do a lot of that. You know, like if you think about how we've evolved the governance model. I mean, I used to do everything myself,
Yeah.
from you know, working on Drupal.org to upgrading the servers to writing the release notes to all of that stuff. And so if you think about it that way, like right now, we have the Drupal Association, which is like, what, 20 people that have taken over something that I used to do. I mean, not just taken over, like they've scaled it and made it sustainable. And then on the technical side, there's a lot of things in place too, right? On how we work and collaborate. And so I think we've done a lot to scale over the years, and we'll continue to do so. And I think you know, makes it very easy in my mind to transition
Yeah,
to
that does
another
make sense.
project lead if that was what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. That's really good. Okay, so Per Andres just asked a question. Oh, yeah? I shall let you ask it.
Sure. What is it? Oh, that one.
All the other anonymous questions are yours too.
DrupalCons cost up to 650 euros, while WordCamp Europe is about 40 euros.
Oh, a ticket price, yeah.
The program is comparable, but they have 1 day less, at least.
Yeah.
So how is the WordPress community able to pull this off? I've actually been there, and they're great conferences.
I mean, I'll let Megan comment in a second, but really, these events are expensive, right, to organize, and there's typically either you get money from sponsors or you get money from attendees. So I don't know WordPress's, you know, how they do it, but my gut tells me they get a lot of money from sponsors, so then they have to charge less money from individual attendees. So that's, I think, how they would do it. Because somebody has to pay for the event. And maybe their event is lower quality too. That's another way. It's not? No? Yeah. So then...
So
Oh.
the project, obviously, WordPress is differently structured than ours, and they have Automatic as a single privileged actor that's making money off of WordPress.com. And what they do is they take their income and they invest in their community in a way that we don't have as a mechanism. So they take that income from WordPress.com and subsidize the event, as well as charge much, much more for sponsorship. So our diamond is $20,000 here, and they charge $100,000. So it's just very different economics.
So yeah, basically what I said. More money from... No, but I didn't mean it that way because it's great clarification. But it's more money from corporate sponsors, so they charge less to individual attendees.
I just did a talk about this.
Oh, great.
How WordPress manages the events. Yeah, sponsors basically pay for everything. I can tell you that a small scale event, like the one that I organize in my hometown, WordCamp Torino, we have about 250 attendees. We charge 20 euros per person, but the actual cost per person is between 60 and 70 euros, and that is subsidized by sponsors. Automatic sponsors at the highest level with Jetpack and Akismet and some of their brands. It really depends on the event. I think WordCamp Europe last year, it was 2,000 people, and the highest level was about 50,000 euros. It really depends on the year and the number of attendees, but WordCamp Europe is 3 times the size of this event. And yeah, sponsors.
Okay. So, as you're busy doing all your work, and you write blogs, and you write blogs directly onto Drupal, and you do blogs on your own blog as well. Do you compose them all directly in the website, or do you use some app and then compose and then copy them in?
Actually, yeah, it's a great question. So, admittedly, I write them on a variety of different apps. So some I write in Google Docs, especially the ones where I want to solicit input from others, because Drupal doesn't have a good collaborative editing capability. Otherwise, I would do it in Drupal. So the one that I posted this morning about Drupal 7, Drupal 8, Drupal 9, we actually worked on with maybe 10 people, because I invited all of the Drupal 8 core committers to it. I invited the Drupal 7 core committers to it, and the security team, because I wanted all of them to feel like, all right, because we're basically signing up to do certain things, like, you know, maintaining Drupal 7 and maintaining Drupal 8 until certain points in time. And I wanted people to be able to chime in. Sometimes when I'm on a train or something, I actually use, and I'm in offline mode, so I take the train to work when I'm in Boston, and for some reason there's really poor cell phone reception on the train line, which is a crazy thing, because it's 2018. But welcome to America. And so I use an app, I don't know if you know it, it's called Bear, like B-E-A-R. It's an awesome little writing app, and so I write offline. I also do a lot of writing on planes. I fly a lot, about 250 miles a year or something. I think I did the math once, which is like 20 days full-time on a plane. And so I've gotten to use offline writing. I do a lot of my writing offline, I would say, and so I can't really use Drupal for that either. So I guess most of my blog posts are actually written in outside of Drupal and then copy-pasted in.
Okay, cool.
I know. But I bet all of you guys do the same. So don't judge me when you do the same thing.
It's funny, actually, because isn't there a Cambridge outside Boston as well? A place called Cambridge.
Yeah.
I go through Cambridge quite often on the train. Terrible mobile reception there too.
I'm not making it
UK.
up. But yeah, offline support and collaborative editing would help a lot, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay, last question.
Right.
Very last question. Have you cooked any of the umami recipes?
I have not.
Ah.
Well, they were only stable 1 week ago. I wouldn't want to cook an experimental recipe.
So will we be seeing a blog post soon with pictures of your attempts?
Yeah, I'd love to contribute. I'd love to try a recipe, maybe contribute a recipe too. Yeah, with some photos. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone. We're
at
the end of the session, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.